Good morning, Loganites. Today we are going to do Paw Paws Interview. He is my granddad on my mom's side. He's super cool. He's a really good role model. I mean, I've known him like all my life. Always been there, always on time. He was in Vietnam. Very chill, very respectable. I don't know. He commands a lot of respect, and it's kind of hard to put my finger on why. Like, I've been retired most of my adult life. I don't know. I'm excited to do his interview though.
Let's see what type questions you're going to ask me.
Well, I always like to start off with, what's your name and how old are you?
My name's David Nolan King. I'm 77 years old. My birth date is September 16, 1943.
All right. So what did you do for work, and like how did you get into what you did, and how did all that happen?
Well, how I got into the data processing is I'd gotten out of high school and maybe 1 year of college at Arlington State in Arlington, Texas. And I was at church, and this man that I know at church, he asked me if I'd found a job yet. And I told him no, I hadn't found a job. He said, well, come see me on Monday. And he worked at the Fort Worth Army Depot. I didn't know what he did. So I went out to see him and went and talked to him. He took me up to personnel, and the lady up in personnel said, you ain't got any experience for anything. We don't have anything. And I left and went home. A few weeks later, I saw the same man as Mr. Wickline, who it was. I saw him at church, and he says, I'd like for you to come to work on Monday. So I go back out to the Fort Worth Army Depot. I check through personnel. I see this same lady that, what are you doing here? And Mr. Wickline had created a position for me, a temporary position, not to exceed 700 hours. And I went to work at the Fort Worth Army Depot. I started out answering phones for the chief of the data processing. And in addition to answering phones, they wanted me to start learning the equipment. Back then, this was pre-computer days, so you had what they called EAM equipment, electronic accounting machines, where you have sorters, collators, interpreters, calculators, printers. So I started learning the machines on this 700-hour temporary job I had. And when it expired, he got it extended. And I had to keep taking a test an entry test to get on. And finally, when I passed the entry test, they put me in a permanent position as a key punch operator. But I never did do key punch. I really worked the AM equipment. But that's how I got my foot in the door. And then I quit, said I wanted to go back to school. And partly the machine room chief was very hard to get along with. She liked me, but she was very hard to get along with. And I was just tired of dealing with her and decided to go back to school. So I was accepted down at Texas Tech in Lubbock. Went there for a year, but then my mother got sick. I needed to go back to work. I didn't burn any bridges when I left the Army Depot, and I was able to go back to work, working for the same lady. And in 1966, Secretary of Defense Mr. McNamara, he closed the Fort Worth Army Depot. So then I started looking for a job, and I went down to Austin, Texas a couple of times and interviewed at Internal Revenue in Austin. And I take it back, it was 1965. And finally, they called me up one day. I wasn't very successful. Had good interviews, they talked good and everything, but they never hired me. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I get a call on about Wednesday, and they say, "Can you be here Monday to go to work?" And that was a big increase because I was a grade 3. I started out as a grade 2 and got a promotion to grade 3 when they hired me permanent. But the job in Austin was a computer operator trainee, grade 5. So I was able to go down. That was a good promotion back then. So I went down to Austin on Saturday. Met my friend that was going to the University of Texas. We went out and looked for apartments. We rented an apartment, drove back to Fort Worth, loaded my pickup up, and moved on Sunday and went to work on Monday. And that's how I got into the computer field. And then I was able to get some promotions in Austin. I was a grade 7, went 5 to 7. Then I was drafted, served a year in Vietnam.
So you didn't enlist, you were definitely drafted?
Yeah, I was drafted.
Okay.
Yeah, I was drafted into the Army in 1966. Went to basic training in March of 66. Went to, I think, advanced infantry training around June. And in advanced infantry training, I was trained in guerrilla warfare training, heavy weapons. My MOS was heavy weapons infantry. Got out of advanced infantry training. We had to go down in these simulated tunnels, looking for enemy and all that stuff in guerrilla warfare training. Got out of advanced infantry and was assigned to the 25th Infantry Division in Vietnam in September. I think it was around September 18th of 66, I was in Vietnam. Got very lucky. I went to Vietnam as a replacement. Didn't go with a unit, so went as a replacement. Went through the 90th Replacement Battalion and got reassigned to the 25th Data Processing Unit. So I worked for the USARV, which is United States Army Command Vietnam headquarters. So I worked for headquarters. Did that for a year and then returned to the States and worked up in Washington, D.C. for about 6 months in the accounting department for Stratcom CONUS, which was communications. They had the communications people that travel with the president, but we did the accounting work for it. And did that for 6 months. Then I returned back to Austin in I think April of 68, and got a promotion to a grade 9. They were installing a new system, so I was working with the new system. I went to Phoenix, Arizona, worked for GE a while on the new system. Returned to Austin when it was installed in Austin. Then I did some traveling with the new system. First stop was Atlanta, and that's where I met my wife. And we probably dated for about 4 weeks maybe, and then we got married in November 1st of 1969.
4 weeks.
Yeah, probably. It wasn't very long. I was there 8 weeks, but I didn't meet her till I had been there a few weeks before I met her. And she had 2 children, and we got married. Took them trick or treating Halloween, and got married the next day. That's what we did.
Wow.
And so then moved her and her 2 children to Austin. We were there until 1971, and I got a promotion to grade 11 unit manager in Memphis, and we moved to Memphis in 1971. August 1971, we moved to Memphis. Stayed in Memphis till stayed in Memphis till 1984. 1984, I went to Atlanta for promotion to grade 13 as database administrator at the Atlanta Service Center. And then in 86, IRS reorganized again, and they hired me back in Memphis, and I came back to Memphis as a second section chief in Memphis, and stayed that until I retired in December of 98. Then I went to work for Northrop Grumman and worked for them. Well, between Northrop Grumman and ACIC, I worked 7 years on contract for them, testing IRS programs. And I managed the group here in Tennessee. Basically, I did the same job I was doing for IRS, just for a different company, and moved me to a different location in the building. And
wow.
then I retired from that job. I actually lost the contract. I could have gone to work for another contractor, but Mary had gotten sick, and I went ahead and retired then in February of 2006. So I've been retired from IRS for 22 years and 15 years from the contract work.
It's a long time to be retired.
Oh yeah, it's unbelievable to draw a check for 22 years. I mean, my main check coming from Internal Revenue for 22 years. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
How have you enjoyed retirement?
Well, retirement's been tough because I didn't get to do things that Mary and I had planned to do because she got sick. And I spent 5 years taking care of Mary and 10 years taking care of Deborah. So it's been tough. But I could have taken care of them if I hadn't been able to retire.
You took really good care of them.
So it worked out good. Now I built this space with the help of my 2 sons and 2 grandsons, Logan and Caleb. Both helped a lot. Heath helped, Jennifer's helped. So it became a family project, and as you can see now, this is what it looks like.
It is amazing. So you grew up, you were born in 46, right?
43.
43. So
Yeah.
you grew up in the 50s.
Yeah.
What was that like before you joined the military? I guess before you got your job at the depot and everything as a child.
I tell you, growing up, we didn't have anything. My brother and I, we were raised with my grandmother and granddad.
Mm-hmm.
So we had this small house. In the small house, there was grandmother and granddad. Bud, who was an invalid, which was their son, but they built him a room outside attached to the garage. But in the house was grandmother, granddad, Aunt Glenda, Aunt Earlene, my mother Thea, myself and Dan, and a dog. And we started out in this small house with 1 bathroom. And so growing up was tough, but we didn't have anything to speak of, and we were fortunate that my mother worked, and between the people at her work, people at the church, and good neighbors. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have much for Christmas. But we always had a good Christmas because just a lot of friends and people that knew my mother's situation and gave Danny and I gifts. But I look back on it and didn't have organized sports. But we'd get the kids in the neighborhood and we'd play football, we'd play baseball. Never did play much basketball, which would be easy to put a hoop up in a tree and shoot the ball. We didn't have that, but we played football and baseball and just goof around and all the things. But we just had a lot of fun, and nobody had a lot back then. So you didn't miss not having anything. It's not like today. And today you got so many electronic games and everything else to play that we didn't have that. But I think even though times were tough, I think in a way it was more fun. And we had a lot of friends and a lot of kids to play with. And we made our own games and our own rules and just had a lot of fun. Didn't have much money, but when we had money, we'd go to the theater, get in the movie, matinee on Saturday, and popcorn and drink, maybe spend a quarter. You know, back then that was a lot of money. Didn't get to do it all the time, but we were able to do it fairly frequent. Mm-hmm. I loved to bowl. Used to bowl a lot, and but bowling was also reasonable back then compared to what it is today. You know, you could bowl probably 3, 4, 5 games for $1, depending on they'd have specials and things. So I used to bowl a lot. And when I was in high school, I was team captain of our bowling team, which we had a pretty good bowling team, and did pretty well in our bowling in high school. So I think in a lot of ways it was a little just more fun. Everybody just laid back a little bit more than it is now.
Yeah. Do you have like a favorite memory from your childhood?
Dan and his friends, they used to play pranks all the time, and we used to, I'd just be with them to get in trouble. But we used to do all types of different pranks on people and stuff. Do
you remember a particular prank? Like, what would he do?
Well, one of them that we did, but he used to scare me all the time with the garbage men. He'd tell me the garbage men were going to get me, and I'd run hide under the bed every time the garbage men came around. But one of our pranks, we were throwing eggs, and I put some eggs in my pocket. Our neighbors, I think it was our neighbors, had a pretty good sized truck parked in the drive, and I had eggs in my pocket, and I jumped up in the back of the truck to get in the truck, and I squished all the eggs in my pocket. that was one of them. But we'd do things, nothing real mean, but mischief.
Did you ever get in trouble with the law doing that?
No, I never got in trouble with the law, but when we did bad things, Grandmother would go out and get a switch off a tree and just whip us pretty good. Mm-hmm. So, and back then, if you got in trouble in school and your parents found out about it, you got beat at home too. You just get in trouble at school. But I think that's one thing lacking today. Kids don't have the discipline that we had back then, because we knew if we got in trouble, we was going to be in trouble at home too. And word got around the neighborhood pretty quick, because everybody watched out for all the other kids. And if you got in trouble, even if it's down the street, you get back home, you're in trouble at home. So, oh, and I'll tell you another prank we used to pull is my grandmother. She was the cook of the house. She didn't let anybody cook. She was the only one cook, but she would let me cook. I don't know why, but I'd pull a stool up to the stove and help her fry okra and do some different things. But one day my brother and I tied her. She always had an apron on. So one day my brother and I tied her to the cabinets, tied her apron strings to the cabinet. So then when she went to move, she couldn't move. So she took us both upstairs. Yeah, I think that house had upstairs we were in. She took us up to her bedroom and tied my brother and I to the bed so we couldn't get loose.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I did different things like that. Oh, and on April Fool's Day, we put salt in the sugar shaker and sugar in the salt shaker, and I forget what we did in the pepper. And my granddad thought grandmother had gone nuts with her cooking because nothing tasted right. And we got whipped for it, so we had to straighten it back out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we used to have some fun.
So, from back then, so you grew up back then, where was there electricity in the house?
We had electricity. Now we didn't have TV.
Was there running water?
We're from the places that I can remember. Now I can't go back from maybe some of the places that Dan started at being almost 3 years older. But the places that we lived 3016 Avenue J is the place that I started out in elementary. And then Grandma and Granddad, they moved to 4206 Avenue J, which was just a few miles down the road. But both those houses, we had electricity. On 3016 Avenue J, we didn't have a refrigerator. They had, and it'd be worth something, they had a Coca-Cola box out on the front porch that you just put ice in. And the ice house wasn't but a few blocks away, because we'd have to go down there and get ice daily, to put in the ice chest thing. But we had running water, and we had a bathroom. And then when we moved to 4206 Avenue J, it also had running water and one bathroom. And then as they expanded that house, they eventually added couple more rooms to it and another bathroom to it. Those are the two houses that I grew up in, started elementary and then finished high school on 4206 Avenue J. And I didn't move to Austin until I think it was February of '65 when I moved to Austin.
So starting from way back then to now, what's been your favorite technological advancement?
Well, I tell you, there have been so many technological advancements. I started out in the computer field, which I stayed in my whole career. And it's always amazed me how much just that field has changed. The size of the computer equipment, tape drives, disk drives, the technology going from punch card to now electronically just stored data. It's just been amazing. You have an iPad today is more powerful than the computer equipment that I started out on that was commercial computers. Uh, your iPads today, even the iPhone, is more powerful than what we worked on back when I started out in the computer field. So it's amazing the technology and how it's advanced in that area, but not only in that area, just in practically everything. Now, as far as the one thing that always amazed my granddad was airplane. Now he went from a Model T Ford, saying Model T Ford era, up, to seeing some of this technology going into computer stuff, even though he wouldn't know much about that, but all the way up to flying, that commercial air traffic became popular. And I took him out to Dallas Love Field, and we were able to park where he could watch at this time, they've gone from prop planes to jet planes, and we were watching some of them land, and he just got so excited about that he wanted to go see Aunt Glenda up, and she was living up in Arlington, Virginia, and so they got him a ticket and flew him up to Arlington and back. And I know he was thrilled about it, just couldn't believe it. Something like this can get off the ground and fly. I've seen that, but then I've seen the improvements in the airline industry too. And then the other thing that has really improved back in my day, the two big places to shop was Sears or Montgomery Ward's, and the big thing was catalog shopping, and we'd always go through the catalog, do most of our shopping from the catalog, and then that seemed to disappear, and you started having these big malls built, and now we're sort of back to the catalog days that we do it on the internet, and that business has really grown in that you can buy things through the internet from most any department store or Amazon or almost any outlet and have it shipped to your door, which is almost like what we started out in the catalog days, except instead of having a catalog, you look at it on a computer or iPad or iPhone or something, and you can order.
But it's still a catalog.
But still, right, it's still a catalog. And what amazes me, here Montgomery Ward's and Sears went out of business and stopped their catalog days, and they were ahead of the game. I mean, they had their big warehouses to ship stuff out of, and if they'd stayed in the game and converted over to the new technology, shoot, they'd probably be superstores.
Mm-hmm. They could be the Amazon right now.
Yeah. One store that in Fort Worth that always amazed me, though, and it was Leonard Brothers, and we did a lot of shopping at Leonard Brothers because Leonard Brothers, they had everything from chickens to food, groceries, clothing. But the thing I liked about it was that Christmas time, down in their basement, they had a monorail. And now this is back in the 50s. They had a monorail that went around the basement, and they set up Santa Claus, and all the Christmas stuff was set up in the basement. And I don't remember what it cost, maybe a nickel, get on that monorail, ride around to the basement, and from the monorail you could look down and see all the departments and look at all the stuff and go visit Santa. And every Christmas, mother or grandmother or somebody would take me up there, and I just loved riding that monorail. And to think how advanced that was back in the 50s, you know. And they're out of business today, but they were way ahead of their time.
Things have changed a lot.
Yeah, things have changed a lot. Well, the other thing, transportation has changed a lot. We always had to take a bus. My granddad and grandmother, they didn't have an automobile. And so the only way we got around was either taxi, bus, walk, bicycle, or a friend that had a car would pick us up and take us somewhere. My granddad had a old truck. I guess it was a Model T Ford truck back in the day, and it run out of gas, and he struck a match. There's no gas gauge or anything. It exploded. The fumes exploded on him. My grandmother was just telling the story about it, how he came in all black faced and whatnot from the explosion. He never drove after that. So he never drove. He used to drive delivery truck. Well, he started out a horse and buggy delivery. And I've got some pictures where he's wagon and horse. He was delivering, I forget the company name now. And then he was doing that in this old Ford pickup until he had his problem with it. And but he never owned a vehicle. And always either walked to work or took the bus. Usually take the bus because he worked downtown at the Hotel Texas, sold papers. He worked 7 days a week. He'd leave in the afternoon, go to work, and get home about 1 in the morning, 1, 2 in the morning, and sold papers down at the Hotel Texas, which was I think the only hotel back then, but it was the big convention hotel, ballroom hotel, or whatever, you know. It was the big deal in Fort Worth back then.
Wow.
And when I was able to get a driver's license and start driving, there were times when I was available, I'd tell Granddad, you know, I'll take you down to the bus line. To get the bus, you don't have to walk, because it was, I think, about 2 mile walk down there to the bus line. And some days I'd come in and come pick him up, and he wouldn't be there, and I'd go driving down Avenue J, and there'd be walking to the bus. Granddad, why didn't you wait on me? He'd tell me, he says, it's just faster to walk. So, but I'd pick him up and take him to the bus.
That's awesome.
But that's how we got around in those days. And but like I said, technology has changed in automobiles, because automobiles are more reliable today than they were back then. Back then, even you buy a new automobile, you's always having to put oil in it. Had a lot of grease fittings, so you's always having to get them greased and oil changed, and you seldom could make it between oil changes without changing oil, without adding oil. You know, they always had to add oil. Of course, back then I was still in high school. I worked for Conoco service station, and we were a full service station, so you always checked everybody's oil, washed the windows, but the management pushed us to sell things. And so it was always, you know, checking oil, and you always needed oil, so we're selling oil, we're trying to sell additives for the gasoline, try to sell anything you can, because that's where they make their money. They don't make it on gasoline. They make it on wash jobs, grease jobs, lube jobs, oil changes, any mechanical work. We had a mechanic that worked at the station, so any type of mechanical work they could do.
All right there.
All right there, and that's how they make their money, because gasoline they made maybe 4 cents a gallon, and I don't think they make much more than that today.
Just because it's so competitive.
Yeah, gasoline was never their money maker. It's
beer and diapers.
yeah, it's all the other things, and that's the reason now you got all these fast marts that sell the drinks and bread and candies and all the other stuff, and I'm sure that's where they make their money. They don't make it on the gasoline, but the gasoline brings the customers in. So, and back when I worked, gasoline was generally we had it on sale on specials, maybe 17 cents a gallon. On the high side, usually around 20, 25 cents on the high side. And we always gave stamps and usually a glass and all types of stuff all the time with it. Now it's all pretty much self-service. You know, you have to
just go in and get it yourself.
Yeah, you have to pump your gas yourself and all, but we had to always wash the windows, check the tires, add air. Somebody need air in the tires, check the oil. We were full service, did everything. I mean, I started out 50 cents an hour and quit at 60 cents an hour.
Wow. Wow.
But I only did that when I was in high school.
Well, you've lived a lot of places. You've been a lot of places.
Yeah, fortunately with, of course, my military journey took me to Georgia. I had basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia, and then it took me down to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and Leesville, Louisiana. And from there, I went to San Francisco, over to Oakland Army Terminal, and left out of Travis Air Force Base, which is there not far from Oakland Army Terminal, to Vietnam. On the way to Vietnam, we stopped at Hawaii, Philippines, Guam, Vietnam. Then while I was in Vietnam, I was able to get R&R to Hawaii, so flew from Vietnam back to Hawaii, and then a friend of mine in Vietnam, we managed to work some leave and went to, caught a C-130 and went to Bangkok, Thailand, and able to get on a C-130 and come back. Never had an interest in the flight back, coming back into Vietnam from our trip to Bangkok, that when we approached the airport at Tan Son Nhut, there was a gunfight, firefight going on, and from the air you can see all these shells flying through the air, because they use tracers ever so many rounds as a tracer round, and anyway, shells going off everywhere. I mean, it was a big firefight. And so the pilot checked to see, because thought they would reroute him to maybe out at Benoit. There was another airport out at Benoit that they could go to, and they told him no, turn off his lights and land. So we come down through all that gunfire, and I mean, it was a little scary because they turned the lights off the runway, and he had to turn all his lights on, and just before he touched the ground, they turned the lights back on the runway. But he was lined up, and we made it, but it was scary.
Wow. So you came down through a gunfight?
Yeah, we came down through it. I mean, shells going everywhere.
Wow.
We came down through it. Yeah, it was a little scary.
Yeah.
But that's, I really thought they'd reroute him.
Was the trip to Thailand worth it?
Oh, Thailand, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. Of course, back then we were young and crazy, so yeah, we went to Thailand, and we visited a lot of the temples in Bangkok, and of course frequented a lot of the bars, and it was just a lot of fun. Being in Bangkok is just like being in any big city. They had shopping centers, they had divided highways, and but then you get outside of Bangkok, and then you see how the people really
actually
live. But it was a lot of fun, and we took a shopping tour. Like I say, they have shopping centers and all that, but you can see that in the States.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a Thai shopping tour where you go to the Thai shops, And it was a ball because they treat you like royalty, and you go in and they'll hand you a beer, and you can talk and look at the merchandise, and had a girl even offer us a job, and it was just you can have a lot of fun on the shopping tour. So yeah, Bangkok, it was interesting. A little bit of change from Vietnam, but you get outside the big city, it's all about the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
So, out of all the places you've been, what's been your favorite?
well, I don't know. I've had a lot of places that I've enjoyed. Being with Internal Revenue, I've been able to travel to a lot of different places. I worked on a lot of special projects. Of course, most of my time was working in and out of Washington, D.C., but I've always enjoyed Washington, D.C. because they have a lot of museums and places that you can actually go free and see a lot of good stuff.
So, D.C. is your favorite?
No, so
Okay.
it's my favorite, but I spent most of my time in Washington, D.C. So I really do enjoy Washington, D.C. But I've had a lot of good time. I had good times in Andover, Massachusetts. Boy, the lobster's great up there. The people were friendly. We just had an excellent time. I've had good times out in Ogden, Utah. That's some beautiful territory out in Ogden. Went up to, I think, Bear Lake, and I think it's close to Wyoming. But just some beautiful territory there, and we just had some good times going to the ski resorts and different places. But I've had a good time in Kansas City when we were installing the system in Kansas City. I spent a lot of time out there and went camping, and we just had a lot of fun in the hotel. We pulled a trick on one of the women that was from Washington, D.C., working on the project with her. It was her birthday, and we got a piece of styrofoam.
You go.
Anyway, we got this styrofoam size of a sheath cake, and then we got a piece of cardboard that we put it on, and then we iced it, and happy birthday and all this stuff on it. And down in the bar, we brought this in to this lady's for her birthday, and it was going well until she stuck the knife in it. We should have glued the styrofoam to the cardboard, but when she stuck the knife in it, it stuck in the styrofoam and pulled the cake cup. And she pulled the knife, tried to pull the knife out, but she got a big kick out of it.
That's awesome.
So we had a lot of fun in my travels, and I had a good time, of course, in my trip down to Atlanta, Georgia, where I met my wife. We went to the Playboy Club and a lot of different Western clubs, and played a lot of golf, and went to see the Atlanta Braves play many times. So I've had a lot of fun in Atlanta. I've just been fortunate to go to quite a few places that I've enjoyed.
So, if you could move anywhere, like barring travel, the family, and everything, that doesn't matter. So, you could take everything you have with you wherever you want to go. Would you move anywhere?
Well, I still like Texas, and now there's parts of Texas I wouldn't move to, but I've always liked the Fort Worth, Arlington area, and it would be an area that I would probably consider moving to. I wouldn't do it now because I'm too old, and I've got kids and grandkids in Memphis now, so I wouldn't do it. But if
What
I
if you
had
could take it
the,
all with you?
if I'd had the opportunity earlier, I probably would go back to Texas.
Okay.
I just enjoy, of course, that's where I grew up, but I enjoy the Fort Worth area. You know, I don't enjoy Dallas, it's so big, and don't enjoy Houston, it's so big. But even though Fort Worth has grown, you get out toward the west side of Fort Worth where my brother lives, it's still a good area to live in. And it's still not too bad getting around Fort Worth, but it's tough getting around Dallas and Houston. I'd like Austin. I'd even go back to Austin, but the problem with Austin now, it's turned into a liberal city, and they got as much homelessness going on out there as you got in California. So they're running Austin.
All right. So now we're going to the fun questions. All right. So if you had to choose a favorite child, okay, which one would you choose?
That's a tough one. You know, I guess in a lot of ways the youngest probably winds up becoming the most favorite. I know that was Casey was Mary's favorite. Not that she didn't love all of them; she loved all of them, but Casey was probably her favorite, and I guess in a way mine, because he never gave us any problems. I mean, he made good grades in school and just never gave us any problems. And our other kids, we usually had some problems to take care of. Jennifer wasn't too bad either, but Bradley was probably the worst. But that's usually the case with the oldest. You go oldest to youngest, and I think by the time you get to your fourth child, you're sort of tired and you let the youngest get away with more anyway.
If they're not burning the house down, you don't really care.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, you sort of let them get it going. But then they miss out on some stuff that the other kids got a chance to do, you know. So.
So I gotta ask, who's your favorite grandkid? You got 6 grandkids now, right?
Yeah, 6. I got 6 grandkids.
Yeah.
My favorite are my 3 in Tennessee, and just that they just have, to me, have developed. They've set goals. They've got out of school. They seem to be settling in very well and doing very well. So I guess my favorite 3 are here in Tennessee. Of course, I don't get to see the 3 in Georgia that often, so it's hard to make a comparison. But just the things that the 3 boys here have gone through with mother divorcing, so you've had stepmothers, stepdads, father that had his life ended in a tragic accident. 2 grandparents has recently passed away. But with all those things happening, the boys have stayed on track and have, I think, become very fine young men, and they've all been good to help me, you know that.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as Logan's your favorite, though. If we have to put a point on that.
Well, I like all 3 of them, so I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
But, yeah, I like all 3 of them. I mean, y'all all different, like every kid.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has different talents and different abilities and capabilities, you know, so, but I still, and even though Christopher's done very well in Georgia, I mean, he spent time in the Navy and has a good job with Delta, working aircraft maintenance with Delta, so, but probably because I'm here in Tennessee and see Jacob and Logan and Caleb more frequent, that I can just relate with him better.
So, do you have a favorite memory of like being a dad? So, like Brad, Deborah, Mom, or I guess Jennifer or Casey. Like any memories that just like stick out in your head?
Yeah, I built a playhouse for Deborah and Jennifer to play in. I even built a stove in the playhouse for them so they could cook and stuff. And when they became teenagers and quit playing in it, well, then of course Casey took it over. So he liked to cook. He liked to make stuff out of mud, like cookies and things. And he loved to dig in the dirt. And I bought him a plastic shovel. And the plastic shovel didn't work very well. So I was in the store one day and I found this real nice small metal shovel. And gave that to him. And then I got home from work one day and it was a very hot day. And Mary was very mad. And she told me I had to go out there and take care of Casey and clean out or fix the air conditioner. She had to turn the air conditioner off. Well, he had dug dirt and dumped it into the outside unit. It was full of dirt. So I had gone. Hello? Okay, all right. Good talking to you, Nick. Bye-bye. You're something else. But anyway, where was I?
You're saying you went outside in case he got his new shovel.
Oh yeah,
and put dirt all in the air conditioner.
So anyway, Mary was mad at me because it was hot, and she couldn't run air conditioner for a good part of the day. So I went outside to inspect the damage, and when I was leaning over, looking down in the unit to see what a mess I was going to have to clean up, Casey runs over to me and says, Daddy, you bought me a shovel that works. Yeah, I got so tickled I couldn't spank him, because
You're not wrong.
Because I did. I bought him a shovel that worked. That was one of the funny ones.
You got any stories about Mom?
Yeah, Jennifer and Deborah, they like to scare my mother. I think we made a trip to Florida and bought some stuffed snakes. And when my mother would come to visit, they liked to scare her with those snakes. They just got a big kick out of scaring her with the snakes.
What about Brad?
Bradley, he was a tough one in school. He was always in trouble at school. He was always having to go up to school to meet with the teachers or principals or something to get him situated with his. He was funny. He'd help the neighbor girls study. He could have done very well in school because he'd help the neighbor girls study and get their work, and he wouldn't do his work. We had to meet. One time we met with a teacher that he'd read the books, and he always liked to read. But sometimes he'd finish reading his school books and he'd read comic books and get in trouble. He always liked to read. He'd read all his required work, but they wanted him to make like a table of contents thing and list the books you've read and all that stuff. And he wouldn't do it. And we went and met with the teacher, and Bradley was there too, and she was talking about, he won't turn in his work and he won't do this. this work, and Bradley said, well, she knows I read the books. I didn't even do his work. So he was always in trouble. But he'd help the neighbor kids get their work.
The neighbor girls is what you said specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, Tracy next door, and Sherry and Tracy next door.
Well, we're getting to the end. What are you thankful for?
I've just really been blessed. I've had a good life. I wound up, I've had a very good job, and just really blessed with my retirement. They've changed up retirement systems where none of my kids today have the retirement that I have. Now you've got to contribute to your own retirement, and you can work for companies that will also contribute. But when you retire, between that and Social Security is all that you have. And I'm just blessed with a really good annuity from my federal work. You could probably work for companies and jobs and maybe made more money than what I made over the years, but just really blessed in having the annuity that I have. And that I've had health. You know, you don't have a good life if you don't have health, or you can have a real tough life when you don't have health. Health is important, and health is more important than money. Because if you don't have good health, you can't enjoy the things that you might like to enjoy, of travel or even getting out of the house, and whether it be going shopping or going to the store or doing things on your own. So I've really been blessed. You know, 77 years, I've just now starting to fall apart. I've had both knees replaced and had a bad bout with a kidney stone, and I've had cataract surgery. But other than that, I've been in pretty good shape, and been very, very fortunate. So those are things that I've just really been blessed, and you know, I've been comfortable in my assets, and of course living with Casey in a really nice house, and with son's help and grandkids' help, and even Heath and Jennifer, that we've completed this very nice area that we've got here. So just thankful for what I have and what I've been able to do, and my government employment just helped me be able to do this.
Do all of that.
Yeah. Now the contract work helped, because 7 years I worked contract work. It allowed me to position myself to be in a comfortable position. But without my IRS annuity, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm able to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking back, do you have any regrets?
I guess any regret is Mary and I put off doing some things that we'd like to do that we always said we'd do when I retired, but she never wanted me to retire. So, and then she got sick, and we weren't able to do some things that we would have liked to have done. But overall, you know, with the ups and downs of any relationship in life, that I've had a very good 77 years.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything left on your bucket list?
You know, I don't know that I made any type of official bucket list or anything, but I've pretty well done most of the things that I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have to think about what else I want to do. I may make another trip up to Washington D.C. Probably go see my brother in Texas. Probably nothing real exciting. But,
That's it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going over to the farms at Bailey Station and getting in my apartment over at the farms that maybe the early part of 22 I'll be able to set
Actually move in for once?
move in and set that up. It's sort of my long-term insurance policy for my health. Because if I do get sick and get down, I can let them take care of me, and without breaking the bank.
Mm-hmm. Well, if there's any piece of advice that you would feel to give to anybody, what would it be?
Well, after looking back on things and what's happened, is my advice is don't put off what you want to do. If you can afford it and have the time, I know you got to work and earn a living, but you got to balance all that out. And if you can, if you want to travel somewhere or do something, do it while you can, because your life can change overnight. Your whole situation, financial or health or anything, can change. So I would say don't put off something that you really want to do if you can afford to do it, have the time to do it. That would be my advice. And if you get married, you just have to build your relationship with your partner, and if you're male, you just need to agree with the female, and you'll be okay. whatever they want is it's better to make them happy.
That's a good piece of advice.
Yeah, that's the thing. Being married is things change, but that's what I told one lady after Mary died, and I started going to breakfast with the retirees. All these ladies, they were, oh, here's an available man. I said, oh, whoa, wait a minute. Said, it took Mary 42 years to train me, and I don't have another 42 years to be retrained. So, and I told another fellow, he asked me, he said, David, how have you been married so long? And I said, well, at that time I'd been married 35 years. I said, well, I've been wrong for 35 years.
That's all it takes.
That's all it takes. That's right. That you just, you can have your disagreements, and you'll have your ups and downs in any relationship. But in the end, you have to know what's worth the fight, what isn't. And most things aren't worth it. But you know what's worth battling for and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you gotta work with. And you have to realize that it's not one person anymore. It's maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever that you're looking out for and making decisions. And the biggest thing usually the biggest problem in marriage is a lot of times money and managing money. And if you can make budgets and work within your means and have money, to buy a few things that you'd really like to have, but have the money to pay for the necessities of food and housing and all that, and be comfortable is really important. within your means. And don't worry about what the person down the street has.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you gotta live with what you're able to do.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you'll have a happier life, because debt puts a lot of stress on the marriage.
Well, thanks for doing this.
You're welcome.
That's really it.
Okay. Okay, all right. Good talking to you, Nick. Bye bye. Oh, you're something else.
She sounds like it.
Yeah. Well, she's got some big tits, I'll tell you that.
She's a good salesman, then.
I should have said that.